Hi, welcome to NDE TV. I'm Peggy Robinson. Today's guest is David Matthew Brown, and I know nothing about his near-death experience. We met on Facebook, and he's going to share his story with us today. Hi, David.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, thanks for coming. So, start where you like and take as long as you like.
Sure. So it was in 2002, and I was eating a chicken Caesar salad with my girlfriend at the time, and she was talking, and I was chewing on what I thought was a piece of chicken, and it was harder than I thought. So I was like, okay, and for whatever reason, I just tried to swallow it, and it got caught up in my top of my throat. And because I was embarrassed, I tried to swallow it again, and it lodged right in the middle of my throat. And then before I knew it, I was having trouble breathing. And before that, I tried to take like a sip of water and it wasn't going down. And so I gave the Heimlich to Amanda, and I just remember her racing behind me and yelling, "Oh my God, I can't do this. I can't do this." And so I felt her hands on me, and then my eyes started to close, and I just kind of pulled out, like I kind of filled up all the space around me. That's the best way I can describe it. And I was in this space where it felt like a mother's womb, really peaceful, really loving, jet black. I was somewhat aware of where, like, this space, this like complete spaciousness that I was in. Um, but it was just, I felt at the time, and I still sense this, that I was everywhere all at once. I wasn't, there was no body. I wasn't aware of my body anymore. I wasn't aware of anything. Um, as I was there, I don't know how much time had passed, like in that sphere. But then, like, just trickles of light just started coming in, just trickles of light. And I just started feeling just different types of presence around me, and it was still black, it was still jet black, it was just felt like so much love that I was experiencing, that it was overwhelming but also comfortable, because at that time before that, I was a working professional actor. That's all I did, and I was accustomed to anxiety and worry, like where's my next job going to come from. And I had a lot of ambition, wanted to win an Oscar. I wanted to, like, I had all these goals. So never in my life had I ever experienced that amount of peace, and it was overwhelming. And then I was pulled back in through this area, and I filled back up in my body, and I just let this bone go. And when I opened my eyes, all these people were crying. This old woman came up to me and she was like, "Oh my God, you were literally a rag doll. You were dead. Like, how are you here?" So I was told that I was dead for about 16 minutes, just like a rag doll in this person's arms. And the crazy part was, at the time, I wasn't into like meditation. I went to church when I was younger, so I would always pray. Um, I just wasn't into any of it. And I bring that up because the guy that did the Heimlich on me, I turned to him to thank him, and then the fire department had just arrived and they were checking my throat and everything. So I said, "Hold on a second, let me do this, and then I want to talk to you." And he said, "Okay, okay." Fire department checked my throat. Everything seemed to be fine. I went to look back to talk to the guy. He was in a dead sprint in a suit and tie, running away. I never saw him ever again. I have chills right now over my body. I never saw that guy. I don't know who he is. I don't know where he came from. And before the experience happened, Amanda got kicked out of a table of four, because there was only two of us, which then led us to this place outside on the on the outer edge of where people eat. And if she wasn't kicked out of that spot, I probably would have died. It just so happened that like where she was, she said that's where that guy was walking. So look, like obviously, right, looking back in hindsight, like 2020, you start to put pieces together and start to figure it out. Um, and after that experience, I had so much peace and no ambition. And that's what frightened me most. It's like it's both scary and you're like, whoa. Like all of a sudden you're just completely present and peaceful. And like people would randomly just come up to me and want to talk to me. And or like this couple, I remember we're fighting like out in this little quad area. And I walked by and I said something and they stopped and the woman was like, "Oh my God, uh, can we talk to you?" And I was like, "Okay." So it was like that kind of like unique experience happening afterwards that became really scary because it took me like I'd still go into auditions, but I had no more like fear. I had no more anxiety or worry or whatever, like all those negative things. So I also had no ambition. So I'd be in the room doing my part and I'd leave and it didn't matter to me. Like nothing mattered. Does that make
Were you an
sense?
actor?
I was. Yeah, I did film, TV, and commercials at the time. And so because of that experience, it shifted my pathway into what I do now, which is bereavement support, work in palliative care. I've worked with thousands of people that have lost somebody.
Now, when did you told me the dates you had your podcast, but when was your NDE? Was it before or after the podcast?
It was during the podcast. I
Okay.
did my podcast from like 1999 to like 2005.
Mhm.
Um, but when I started that, that was just kind of like to start something to start to figure out without knowing what I was doing. Why? How do you wake up? Like, what does that mean? Like, what is happening? So yeah, the NDE happened in there, and I never brought it up on my show. It took me. I was speaking at a Unity Church in Westlake in Los Angeles in 2000, man, maybe like 15. And that was the first time that my friends knew about it, my family knew about it, but it felt like kind of a coming out party in some way. Like my daughter was there. She was like, oh boy, like listening to me. She's heard the story before. But yeah, it was a unique experience because it felt like I was kind of coming out of a closet or something like, and I don't know. I mean, you might know because this is what seems like you do with NDEs is why it took me so long and why I was not embarrassed, but a little bit like, uh, you know, I don't know how to explain what happened.
I was the same way.
Yeah. How'd yours happen?
Tubal pregnancy in 1986. But I had drowned when I was 5, but I didn't remember that till after the second one. And I was 25 years
Wow.
old at that time. And I'd never heard of NDE. When I first come back, I thought, what the hell was that? I was just in
Right.
heaven accepting it. And now I'm back. And I thought, and I remember my exact words, it sounds silly, but I remember my exact words. And I thought, this has never happened to anyone in the history of the world.
Yeah.
Because I never had heard of anything, could conceive of it, but I knew where I had what I was just in heaven accepting it because I fought. I didn't want to stay because I had a little boy's home. So, but it took me months, and then I told my ex, and he said, "I know how it sounds, but I know you, and I believe you." But then I thought, what do I do? Like I even have a name to go to the library, even look it up. Even what is
Yeah.
this? Has it happened to others? I started wondering. And so it was, decades before I started hearing about, well, actually it was a few months later. Oprah was new at the time. and she was talking about, here, I'll flip it off me. She had guests on talking about near-death experiences. And at that time, I thought they were weirdos. And I
I could see
scoffed at them. Like I never scoffed. I said, oh my God, how stupid do they think people are? And I took a step back to go into the kitchen to start cooking dinner. And something just like stopped me in my tracks. Why does that sound so familiar? Like, oh my God, it was real. It was real.
wow.
And because I lost my twins in my NDE as ectopic pregnancy, and so I had
Oh,
depression and
wow.
I didn't want to talk about it. I was scared to death I would get pregnant and die again, even though
Wow.
I want another baby, so I wasn't preventing it. And so I had all this fear surrounding it. And then here it was, just like I know it was real. But then what do you do? And so yeah, I sat on it for a long time. And then
Wow.
I even read like later on a couple NDE books, long time later. And then I Survived and Back was on. And I started asking myself, like, why am I so drawn into this stuff? What is it about it? Like, nothing ever got
Yeah.
my interest like that. And then I started wondering, was mine indie? Because I wasn't labeling it as that right away. I was like,
Right.
it seemed like something so personal, something I had hid so far inside me.
Yeah. Yeah,
So
totally. No, I totally agree. And it's fascinating because I went up to, I grew up in San Francisco. And so over Christmas, my daughter and I went back, and my whole family's still there. And out of the blue, my mom was like, when you were a kid, you died two other times. And I didn't know that. No one had ever told me those stories. So this would have been my third time crossing over and coming back.
you don't
So I
remember
was
the
just
other
thinking,
two?
I was like, do I not want to be here? It's like,
Did
I'm
you
working
ever
hard, I guess,
remember?
not to be here.
Did you ever
I did
remember
not
the other two?
remember. The first one was when I was an infant, and I guess I choked on something then.
Oh.
And then the other one was like I fell in some like neighbor's pool or something
Hmm. After
and drowned.
my NDE at 25, I remembered a drowning at 5 years old. One night, it just kind of opened up to
Wow.
me in the sky like this big movie theater screen. And it like took me over, like I was in it. And I was like, did I drown when I was little? And I went and asked my mom. She said, yeah, you did. So
Wow.
she didn't want anybody to
And
know
why did
about
they
it.
not, do you know why they didn't tell you?
She didn't want my dad to find out because I was their fifth child, but I was actually the sixth because their firstborn died at 9 months old. And she said my dad's family blamed her, and she didn't want
Wow.
them talking about this happening.
Wow.
Because my brother was carrying my dead body back up to the house, and I started choking up water hanging over his shoulder. And so, yeah.
Wow.
So I don't know, maybe you'll remember it just out of the blue some days. I was just went outside to get away from my ex's family and just wanted to be alone. And I just kind of released a lot of stuff like, God, I give up. These people are never going to like me and da, 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 and I just let go. And then this big screen opened up and I saw the drowning from front to back. And then later on, bits and pieces start coming back, and even the what you call now after effects, which I didn't know that then. After NDE, these strange things happen. At 5 years old, start having strange
Yeah.
things happen, and then strange things happen after the 25-year-old NDE. And I never put together, oh, this is called an NDE, and these are after effects, and this is common. Not till
Right.
decades later when I started listening to a lot of the research and understanding, and because I wanted to know. Once I realized that's what it was, I was still shy about it, but then eventually, and I said I had to believe it myself. I feel like I had to believe
Mm,
it myself before I could try to get anybody else to believe it, because I just didn't see
mm,
how this could be true. And I didn't want to go around talking
right.
crazy until I knew for sure. But then once I knew for sure, then
Yeah.
I couldn't, stop listening to other NDEs and reading the research. And I don't agree with everything that they put out. I think for myself, and I listen to, people on my podcast and their indies, I'm learning more. Um, So
So what do you do now? Are you a healer? Did it open up like any like in a deeper intuition? Did it open up something in you that before you were like, oh wow, what's this?
when I was 5, after the NDE, I saw spirits by my bed one day. I was sitting on the toilet being punished for getting up during the night having to pee. And I sit there all night on the toilet and I saw the spirit come out of me and go out the window. And I thought, what in the world?
Oh,
You know, these things I didn't understand at Sunday school. I was at Sunday school one day and I had this spiritual experience where this picture I was calling of Jesus, coloring of Jesus and the children. Suddenly I was in heaven and that scene was right there in front of me. It was live. I didn't
wow.
understand any of this stuff. And then I had like the name of my books, The World of Wildflower, because after the drowning, family went lake fishing. And I had this experience where I looked down at this flower, it's growing in this awful place, growing off of a rock. And I started having these visions, kind of like I had during my drowning, where I was getting this information and these visions was open up
Wow.
one after the other and then teaching me this. And I believe it was the angel that I heard talking when I was above the pond drowning. That was her way of communicating with me again, because this stuff started forming. And then I started realizing, as I got older, I started putting the pieces together. All these things I thought was too weird to even talk about. I started realizing how they fit together. That is the way God
Wow.
communicates on the other side. These visions open up. And I say, just like right now, if I could say, see this is my drowning, and you just watch this whole movie thing, but you feel like you're in it.
Right.
And that's the way they communicate during the drowning. And then during the second NDE, a scene opened up and like, oh, okay, I get it now. And but they can also happen. I realize, after you've had an NDE, they can still happen. These visions can just start opening up and give you like little premonitions or a little insight and stuff that's going on that you wouldn't normally know. And no, I don't call myself a healer or a medium, none of that stuff, because I say
Right,
what
right, right, right.
happens to me happens. I don't command it in, it's just something that happened out of the blue, and it don't happen very often, but I've been trying to learn to listen and trust it.
It's amazing. Yeah. Wow. That's incredible.
So I'm curious. You're an actor. You were in movies. What were you in?
I did a lot of like independent films that like went to Sundance, and then I did a TV show for Warner Brothers called Jack and Jill, and then I did like hundreds of commercials.
I remember Jack and Jill.
So
So what all of us
yeah,
indie
and what's interesting,
ears?
yeah, lately, like, so yeah.
Good.
Oh, so I've written two books that were published, and then recently I've been starting to like write feature films and TV stuff. So I feel like I'm gonna probably get back into it from a different angle because now the messages that I have to say are somewhat more inspiring. Like one of the projects that I'm working on is because I coach varsity girls soccer, and one of the things that I've noticed working with teenagers is they have a little bit of self, pity, and they beat themselves up a lot. And um, so the story that I'm writing, the TV show that I'm writing, is watching this teenage girl go from that to discovering who she really is, like her authentic self. So I feel like that's the message that we need more in entertainment than just flat out like violence and like fear and all kinds of stuff. Like, and I'm not saying that it needs to be positive or negative. I'm just saying that we need to start to see the layers of people and who they are and what they go through. And everybody's got their own path. And sometimes it's very difficult. And sometimes it appears to look easy. Then it becomes difficult. Everybody's got to go through all those different things. So I think that'd be fascinating to be a part of by creating those types of stories for people.
I've got someone writing my screenplay out for my book right now. So
Yeah.
what does the average person do after they have a screenplay in their hands? Like, is there probably like no way they can get somebody to look at it as a possible film?
No, there. I would say that there's several ways, right? Like you just submitted to like a an agent a literary agent that works with film and TV. So there's some in LA, there's some in New York, and just ask them to take a look at it. Or you can enter it through like, for example, Sundance offers like a writers contest. So every film festival, there's thousands of them around the country, offer like a writing contest. And so if you win it, or you're in the top 10 or top five, um, people are going to start wanting to give you money for your script to produce it. So the, for me, like there's several ways of going about it, right? It's good for you.
So,
Good. Get it out there so that more people talk about it. On my end, because my experience was in the jet black, literally jet black, um, I was like, wow, like I'm not meeting Jesus or Buddha or flying over forests or, whatever. And then I watched a talk with Christian Murdy from the 1980s, and he had a talk, and it's called um, the uh, the dark that jet black is called Kali, and it's considered an actual death. It's what you go through when you actually die, just jet black, and the same type of feelings that I was feeling. And right when I heard that, I was like, oh, like you had just brought up earlier, I was like, oh, I'm not alone. People go through this part too. But, especially like working in bereavement support, when I work with families, they all want to know from their different perspectives what the other side is going to look like for their child, or what the other side is going to look like for their partner, or what the other side is going to look like for them. And since most of the time I'm working with hospitals, I can't interject um, my own opinions on them, right? I can offer them places to look at, like you were talking about, like you can read on NDAs and their different experiences. You can talk to friends and family. You could talk to your minister or priest or spiritual leader. They could probably offer you some clues. And, um, but when I work independent of a hospital, I am able to at least talk about what my experience was like. And I'm not saying that's everybody's experience, but I do remember always that feeling of just peace and love, and that this body that I'm a part of was never harmed. Like I didn't feel anything. Right at the moment that I was going to go, I went. And I thought, and I always thought, you see those images of people in 9/11 where they're jumping off the buildings. And I would like to believe that before they physically hit the ground, they already left their body.
yeah,
So they never felt it.
I hear that a lot in my NDE guests that, right before a plane crash, a train accident, whatever it was, car accident, is like they were gone
Yeah.
and they were spared that. And I know when I was 16, I was kidnapped and the guy approached me, he's getting ready to rape me. And I was praying, I wish I wasn't even on this earth. And then suddenly I'm in the sky amongst the stars, looking down at earth.
Whoa.
I have my body, I have my long brown hair, I got my clothes on, I'm a tiny little thing, at 16. And I was spared. And I don't care why. I'm just out of there. And I was just looking down at earth. And I had to ask my husband later, I was like, okay, I know nothing about science. Like I daydreamed all through school, but how is it that I'm in this blackness of the sky among the stars, but the earth is glowing, it's blue and all these shades. How was it glowing? And he had to explain to me how that scientists authentically
Incredible.
is, because I couldn't have made that up. I didn't know that it would actually space look like that. No, that it's
Right.
dark, like you wouldn't see anything, would you? But I mean, it was just glowing, and I felt
So
like it's like
you so worry did that person do harm to you or no?
yes. When after I'm there for a while,
Oh,
and I realized, oh, wait a minute, I'm 16. I can't stay up here forever. I'm gonna have to go back. And when
right.
I come back, it was over. And he said, wow, I want a wife like you someday. And I'm thinking, I must have laid there like a corpse, but I have no memory
Wow.
of it at all. And so I felt like I was spared. And I think that's kind
Yeah.
of like what you're talking about, like, that I think people are spared by God. Some people say, well, that's dissociation. That happens a lot in rape and in child abuse. And I'm like, well, is it dissociation or is it God rescuing us? Because I think it's God rescuing us because he does it at death. Why not a trauma?
Mm,
Just
yeah.
pick somebody out and say, you're not going to go through that.
It's a good way of looking at it. Yeah.
Because when I come back,
Yeah.
I thought,
Yeah.
was that a prayer answered? Was that a wish come true? Do I have some ability? I'm not aware. Like, what just happened? I couldn't talk about it.
That's a good perspective because we seem to live in a world, right, that's chaotic and fear-based, and we've created it all in our minds. We've created all these rules and right, everything. And we forget, and we have to get reminded by it that, like, when you go deep into meditation or you go deep into prayer or you're going on a hike and you're overlooking everything, wherever it is that gets you the depths of peace, that this world, no matter what it looks like, the undergirding thing of it is peace and love. And so for what you're saying is actually like another level, like it makes it more magnificent to know that someone is trying to physically harm us, and I'm getting chills everywhere, and we get pulled out of our body so we don't have to, experience the physical aspect of what this person who's caught up in a lie, how they see the world, and they're going to try to punish us. That's great. I've never heard that. I think that's a unique way of putting it. Like, because, right, psychologically or mentally, or all the books that we have, or that's exactly what they say. Why? Because they need to put something on it, but they're not going to put something on it that is beyond their understanding. That's
And
why. That's why it's difficult.
and the people that don't believe in NDEs, I think, well, gosh, we have our wake day, we have our sleep at night. Right there, life has shown us there's different levels of consciousness. And
Yep.
so why, and we have all these weird things happening in our dreams. And yet, when we have an NDE and we can actually, like, when I drown at 5, when I asked my mom, did I drown when I was little? I could tell her exactly where my sister and her come when they come down. They were sitting on this bed sheet. My body was under the water. I was hovering above.
Wow.
I see my brother there on my board and stuff. And so, how can we not have this other levels of consciousness? So,
Right. 1000%. Yeah. Yeah.
and then with my second NDE, because of that NDE, I refused to go home because I knew I was about, when I just got back, I just died. My doctor
Right.
examined me. He didn't see anything wrong by then. My pain, nausea, and feel like I was going to pass out had quit. And I thought I couldn't tell him what just happened. So I said, well, I'm not going home because I knew if I went home, my sons would find me. And I didn't want them finding my
Mm.
dead body because they were just little.
Uh,
And so I thought, I'm not going to do that to them. If I'm going to die, I'll die right here in a hospital. And my husband will get a call because I'm not doing
right.
that. And that was my only option. And so, my NDE saved my life because I refused to go home because of that NDE. And then during the night, I felt like I wouldn't have more NDEs, but I felt like, God, you can't keep bringing me back, because I kept dying. And I said, just keep me alive till morning. Maybe my doctor will come in and do another ultrasound, see what's wrong. And that's exactly what happened. Found out I had internal bleeding from my entire abdominal cavity. It was the biggest tool pregnancy I ever saw. And so if I hadn't been in the hospital, if I hadn't stayed, and the only reason I stayed because it was that NDE. If I didn't have the NDE, if I would just passed out and I woke up, well, I'm fine now. I guess I'm okay. I would have went home and I would have died my sleep, if not on
Mm.
the way home. And so, it saved my life.
Unbelievable.
So,
Unbelievable.
because there's no way I could deny it and to myself that just happened. It was so completely real. I was just in heaven and finally accepting it because I was throwing a fit. And then I was finally accepting it. And then I was back, and I said, who else will teach them about you? And I was back in that wheelchair.
Hmm.
And so, people say, well, what has this meant in your life? And I said, gratitude. A lot of women die of two pregnancies, and from drowning,
Wow.
like you choking, and we're still here. And I started feeling like a responsibility. Like the first time I told my NDE, I found I was just learning to use the internet. It's like 2016 or 15, 14, I don't know. And I think it was 14. And I typed it in. The first thing that came up was NDRF, and it says submit your story. And I typed it in as fast as I could, and I hit send, and I thought, there, I did it. Like I was letting the world know this happened. Like their God, like I show my appreciation. I thought that was all there would ever be to it. I didn't
Right.
know that all these other stuff would start happening.
Wow.
But yeah, I just felt gratitude and like, because I felt like I don't want to, the next time I die, be in front of God and Him ask me, you begged to go back and raise your sons and I let you do it. Did you tell anybody about
Hmm.
us? And I would be like, no, I was too embarrassed. Like,
Wow.
I mean? Like, I did not want to face God the next time and say I was too embarrassed of what people would think of me.
Yeah.
They would think I was crazy or a liar or all those things by not telling. And so, the older I get, I was like, I'll never shut up. Like they can burn
That's
me at a
great.
stake. I'm not taking it back. I mean, it happened.
Yeah. That's a great way of looking at it. I never looked at it that way. I was just like, well, I'm gonna have to share this thing. I don't really understand it, but what I do understand is that there is something much deeper and beyond our superficial mind that is stuck on itself 24/7 and it's all about itself 24/7. And then you have an experience like you die and you come back, and then you realize that the real experience is being in service, just being in service for this thing, whether you call it God or higher realms or whatever it is. But that's who we're really in service to. We're not in service to this kind of small-minded, materialistic thing. There's nothing wrong with it. The adventure's great, right? When you have money, you can go travel and you have food and you can get gifts and you use it for good and all that great stuff. That's awesome. There's no judgment there. And also, I hope that we reach a point on our planet where we can stop reacting and start listening. I mean, that's the
Yeah.
most important thing that I got was what am I listening to? Am I listening to this voice of fear? Or am I listening to a different voice, a voice of love? And how do I know when I'm listening to one or the other? Well, when I feel anxiety, I'm probably not listening to
Right.
the best place possible, right? Yeah,
I've had to try to find ways to get me back in that good space because, we can let life just like eat at us and the fear and anxiety,
sure.
hate, anger, whatever. And then it's like, how do I get back? How do I go to the light after, I feel like I'm in the dark here. Like my teeth are gnawing and my horns are growing.
Right.
I'm feeling this evil. Like, I don't want
Yeah.
to feel this. How do I? And then for me personally, it's Christian music or, my NDE, watching my NDE movies or even something like Little House on the Prairie, just something that has goodness in it.
Right.
I
Yeah.
hate those movies, all the action and the murder and and everybody gets all upset about these shootings, rightfully so, but I think, well, look what Hollywood's putting out.
Right.
Bam, 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 ha ha ha, feel lucky punk, that kind of attitude.
Yeah. And whether the attention is negative or positive, people don't care. They just want attention, right? It's like just attention seeking all the time. I do know something that I do use. I use two different things that are very helpful. And so if people are watching your podcast, um, your nervous system you can actually reset your nervous system by breathing in for the count of 4 and then breathing out for the count of 8.
Hmm.
And by doing that over just a minute, just breathing in for the count of 4 and breathing out for 8, the longer exhalation tells your nervous system and your vagus nerve that you're safe.
Hmm.
And right when it knows that it's safe, everything goes back into alignment in your body and your mind. And then it's just very peaceful. And then the other one that is helpful for people that, because I deal with people that are going through bereavement support that are type A males and females that find it difficult or have never been taught how to be with emotion or feeling or sensations in their body, it's a lot easier for them to run away from them. And so I always encourage them when we start to breathe into your belly for the count of five, and then breathe out for the count of five. And it actually reconnects you to your feelings, because that's what scares people. Fear, it's not so much the fear of anything, really. What it is that we are in fear of the actual emotion of not knowing, right? And so, um, we live in a crazy time where we all kind of deal with what you just brought up, right? Which is that, listen, we all get angry, and we all have emotions and feelings, and they're all a different range of stuff. But what's great about it is it's a mosaic, and it's part of who we are. Like, we are expressive, creative beings, right? And if we're not focused on something bigger than us, we tend to attack the smaller aspects of our life and get all bent out of shape. Car cut us off. Why is the cashier taking so long? Oh my God, I forgot to get the chocolate chip cookies. Ugh, why is my parents calling? Why is my kids calling? Why is my work calling? Right? And so I feel like what you just brought up is really important for people, that our breath is, it's why they call it the Holy Spirit. It's the holy breath. That's what it means,
I
right?
would guess that while you're counting too, you're taking your mind off what you were just
Yep.
thinking,
Yep.
and which would be helpful for me because I have a short-term memory problem. I have a great
Mhm.
long-term memory. I can tell you complete conversations and thoughts, but short-term is really bad. And so if I focus on my breathing, like you're saying, I would forget what I was mad at because
That's a
I'm
good
that
point.
forgetful.
That's a good point. Yeah, I never looked at it that way, but you're absolutely right. Yeah, even just by counting takes the attention off, right? Because a lot of people's attention's up here. You know, in heart math, they have um, doctors that have studied stress, and so they have all these different tools you can use when you're stressed. And one of them is just, and I've taught this in schools for mindfulness, is to picture just the air going into your heart and out of your heart, and they call it heart breathing. And what they've discovered scientifically is the moment that the attention goes out of your head and is focused like on your heart. So, like in qigong, the doctors that you work with, they breathe into their dantian, which is 2 inches below their belly button. So that's their focus. So they fill their guts up, and with air, and it builds their chi, and they're grounded and very firm, which is a good tool as well. But in heart math, they discovered that by breathing into your heart and out of your heart repeatedly, because your heart is the center of who you are, it just, everything follows that faster than your head, right? But again, it's exactly what you just brought up with the counting. It takes your mind off of something and it puts it somewhere else. Like, it just takes the attention, because this whole society is based on paying attention. So that you're paying where you put your attention. So if you put it on the news 24/7, you're paying for it. You just don't know it. Energetically, you're paying for it because everything's going out, right?
Yeah, I can get so involved in doing my podcast and finding guests and all this, and then I'll look around, it's like, oh my God, my house is dirty. Like, how
I
many
think we're
days
all
went by and
there.
I didn't do dishes? It's like,
Yeah,
crap.
we're all there. Yeah.
I didn't know it was even here.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
I think we're all that way.
and I think with guests too, that oxygen, we're doing that breathing, we're getting a little extra oxygen that,
Yeah.
always makes us feel better. Like when you go to the doc, go to the emergency room, first thing you do is start giving you oxygen. It's like, oh, I feel better already.
Yeah.
That
What a
oxygen.
hard that is. Yeah. Yeah.
So you have a couple books?
Yeah. My first book was called The Book of Light, The Heart Opening.
Okay.
And it literally came through I never had an intention of ever writing. And I was in meditation and I just heard, "What is light?" And for the first time, I didn't run up and start Googling what is light. I just kind of sat with it, sat with the question, "What is light?" And then something moved me and I got up and I wrote, which would then be the last chapter of my book. I wrote it out verbatim. And then from that point on, I was given like information for the other chapters to help people get to the final chapter. But the book's unique because every sentence you read in the book, if you go on Amazon and see it, you could, look at the sample, you can meditate on just a sentence. So the book within itself for me was God's book because I didn't really get my own book, like understand it until 2 years after it was published. I was like, oh wow, like this is incredible, right? And it talks about the relationship between your heart, which is the queen, and the brain, which we call mental, right? MEN, which is masculine. Their relationship together and how they work together. Right now, the relationship is interesting because in school we get talked out of our heart, all of us, and into our brain. So what happens is the brain is constantly abusing the heart. It's constantly telling the heart what to do, and it's always trying to control it. It's the reason why it plays out in our, I believe, in our world. The same aspect is happening inside of all of us. It's why people can take abuse because they're taking their own self abuse on their own heart and then also not listening to themselves. So that's why when we look at people and we go, well, how can you stay in a relationship like that? Well, because that's what they're like with themselves. So the book helps people find the balance, the right relationship between the queen and the king. And once they find it, um, the queen lets the king know what she wants, and he goes and gets it. King doesn't tell the queen what to do. And so, what I like about it is it also brings up a genuine respect for the feminine and then a genuine respect for the masculine once they're working together and you can see how they work together from an equal place, right? I'm not talking about equality like physical bodies. That's different, right? Men's bodies are designed for physical work, right? They're designed in a different way. But this book talks about what's going on internally with you and the right way of balancing it out from a perspective that is much bigger than what we're learning about right now. And then it's not about finding anything, or it's just about realigning. That's all it is. So it's not about it's only a 66-page book. But when you start, like, people have started to read it and go, this is going to take me a while. This is going to
Now,
take me a while.
what's your second one called?
Uh, my second one is called 90 Days of Heat. Um, it's based on when I went through my divorce. I had never done it before, but I went and did hot yoga. And every day I did it, I wrote a journal about my experience.
Okay.
And so by day 45, I started to really heal mentally, physically, everything. And so that's what it is. I actually did 100 straight days of hot yoga. I had something like 100,000 people that were reading my blog. And I
Mhm.
thought, well, maybe I'll just turn this into a book. And then what I like about that book is that pretty much you get 90 different methods that may or may not help you, like whatever works for you. And one of the methods in there was actually a death meditation that the Buddhists do that people can try. So you can go through your own death, right? Because the Buddhists believe that once you understand your own death, you'll understand life. Christians believe, forget death, just go to God, which is life, and death falls away. So there are different perspectives on, you know, attaining what you're looking for.
Hmm. when you were talking about that stuff a while ago, I was trying to picture it in my mind, and I was thinking of like falling in love and falling out of love. It's like your heart completely tells you, not your brain, I fell in love or I fell out of love. It has nothing to do with our brain. Like,
Right.
you could fall in love with, like, I know this person's just A, B, C, and D, not good, not what I would pick.
Right.
For whatever reason, I love them. And that's what I want. Even though I may not like this, like my husband, I call him Linus because he's a mess. He's just dirty. And I realized that when I met him, went to his house, it's like, I'm a clean person. How do you live in this dirt? And
Mhm.
his bills, he moved in with me later and we went back to his house and all his bills was laying on the table unopened. And I'm like, you're not paying your bills. So I ended up finally, I said, okay, I can't help it. I could do this. And I got all his, opened it all up, took his checkbook and paid all his bills and got him all caught up. And he wouldn't keep it up. So I would have to fill in
Right.
and his refrigerator was disgusting. And then he comes to my house and he just tries being this Linus, this mess everywhere he goes. But, you know, I loved him. And it's like the heart wants what the heart wants. My mind is like, I don't want this. I don't want this
Right.
messy Linus, you know.
Right. Right. Right.
But my heart was like, but all these other things about him. He's such a family man, he's such a farmer, or the things I
Right.
admire about him. And so I was just thinking about what you were saying is like there's when it comes to falling in love and out of love, sometimes it's gone. Sometimes it's just over. Like with my ex, it's just like one day it's like, it's over. He no longer has that hold on me. I'm free to let him go, do whatever, wish him well, you know. And
Yeah.
our heart just is like has control of us in situations. And then other times, like I was interviewing somebody the other day, and her NDE was from her husband killing her, and
Wow.
and it was after the divorce, and sometimes we have to say, okay, I love them, my heart loves them, but my brain says I'm getting the hell out of here before I die or whatever it is.
Right.
So it's just my brain trying to wrap around the heart and the mind, the king and the queen, what you were saying, and put it in my
Right.
own perspective, I guess.
Yeah. And they work together.
Mhm.
Right. Because right now, people's brains are like processors. Right. They're just processing all this stuff, and it gets out of control for them
Yeah.
because they're
And even,
overthinking.
yeah,
Yeah.
even like doing a podcast, you can focus on, like I sit and take notes of, so I keep things straight because of my memory problem. And then at some point, I got to just like put the pen down and look in their eyes and pick up on their emotions.
Mm,
Um, and it's a whole different way of listening.
yeah. It's
So
true.
people get my wheels turning in the morning.
I love it. It's good.
So, and you talk about choking. That's one of my fears because the last couple of years I've been having trouble choking.
Oh.
And they're supposed to do a test on me at the hospital and I canceled it, but to see if there's something wrong with why when I swallow, I get stuck sometimes. So was
Wow.
that actually chicken? Or did you find out it was something else in your
It was the
meal?
bone. It was just
Oh,
part of the bone that was stuck on the meat, and that's what lodged was the bone. That's why, and I don't know why at the time I was trying to just swallow it. Like, oh, I can just swallow it. You mean like, I don't know,
because we're too embarrassed in
but
public to
yeah,
just vomit.
that's probably true too. Yeah, that I was like, oh, I could just do this on my own, and then you realize you're like, nope, nope, this isn't good, right?
I
Yeah.
choked one time on a
That's
radish and it was dark out. It was at somebody's deck back of their house. There was a bunch of people at a party and everybody's talking and I'm,
right.
and nobody could understand what was happening. And I would kind of push people. Nobody's paying attention to me.
Wow. How'd you get
So
it
I just
out?
kind of threw myself over the side of the deck and just, let gravity help.
Wow. That's smart. Holy cow.
Yeah. And my friend that works on the squad, she says, "Why didn't you tell me?" And I said, honestly, what was going through my mind, if I told you, you would take a knife and cut me. Because I seen that on TV where they cut
Oh
people.
my,
And she says, "Oh, that would have been last resort. I wouldn't have done that right off the bat."
oh my God. I've never heard of that either. Jeez.
Yeah, I've seen on TV, like somebody gets choked and they end up like poking a hole there and making an airway and stuff. And I thought that's what she would do. And I thought, let me
Oh
try
my
this first
God.
on my own.
And you know what? Like this just popped in my head, and I don't know why, but after that experience happened, I mean, my girlfriend and I, we broke up like 2 weeks later
Hmm.
because everything in your life, or at least in my life, shifted. So all those connector points and things that I liked, I just lost all this interest, right? Because you're just like, oh, I'm here, like this is it. Whereas
Yeah.
before, your ego or your mind's like, oh my God, this is it. You got to keep busy. Oh my God, it can't be as boring as this. What are you doing? What are you doing? And then when you're completely present, you actually are aware of, like you had brought up earlier, like the flowers and the plants and the air and everything is so bright and amazing. And so we literally are walking in heaven and earth every day, and we're blinded by our minds.
Because it is a strange thing to live with, to know what it's like to die,
Yep.
because most
Yep.
people don't. And which every NDE is different, like I had two, they're completely different. So you don't know that that's what's going to happen next time you go.
Yep.
But you've been there. And
Yeah.
I feel like when we've been on the other side, even if it was a brief out of body, that we've been on the other side, like we're fully our soul. We're no longer connected to our brain and our body. And
That's
we
true.
come back, we don't forget that part of ourself. And that self wants to continue growing and getting to know itself. And like you
Yeah.
say, the stuff that mattered before don't matter. And I think that's why, because we know our true self without our mind and our body, and it draws us into other areas.
Yeah. That's a great point. Yeah. And there have been moments where I was like, man, why did I get back in this bodysuit? I mean, it's so constricting, right? And I keep believing that this is who I am, but I'm not. Right? I was all this space all at once. I filled it all up.
Yeah. And when I
Right.
come back to my second one, the stuff my ex and his family was doing, it wasn't funny anymore. Oh, they're drinking, and it's like, this is serious. We got little boys and they're going to grow up. And do I want them acting like this and thinking that this is normal? Or, do I want to show them a different life? Like maybe I shouldn't have them exposed to just this. Like should be exposed to other types of men, different role models. And like everything becomes serious.
Yeah.
And I was seeing things for myself instead of just going along, trying to fit in, seeing what everybody else is doing, and thinking that they know everything and I don't. Because I was like that. I thought everybody had all the answers but me. I thought I was just really stupid and I just couldn't figure anything out. And everybody treated me like I was just stupid, but I probably was, because I just wasn't thinking for myself. I was like on autopilot all the time.
Yep. And I feel like that's a good, like, before I go, um, what you were just talking about. I think that's what's difficult for people to understand is that at any second you could go. That's overwhelming for people
Mhm.
because everything's planned for tomorrow and an hour, and they've got lists and all sorts of things, and they have no idea that at any second, no matter where you are, no matter who you're with, it could all just be taken away. Then what do you have left that you've left here besides your material stuff? And besides, like, with your material stuff helping out your family, what did you actually leave here that people can take with them and remember to, like, blah 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 with them? We laughed so hard, right? Or this person brought so much joy into a room, or so much appreciation, or um they were really great at listening, or they were hard to be around, but man, when you needed them, they were always there. You know what I mean? Like everybody's got like their own thing, but I think what blows people's minds away is that you can't fathom the idea that the next second isn't even given to you, not even your next breath. Nothing is given to you. And I'm not talking about like money or all that other stuff, but time, the space that we're in. It's not given to us. This could be it. This could be your only day on this planet,
Yeah, I
quite
think it
literally.
almost puts us in the mindset of a 80-year-old. 80-year-olds, I'm sure thinking any day
Mm,
now, I'm still here. A lot of my friends died. And
that's
death
good.
gets that close and it gets closer and closer as you get older. And I think NDE, no matter what age you had it, kind of puts us in that, oh wow, this can just happen like that.
Yeah.
And I know when I turned 60 2 years ago, I got thinking, wow, I wonder how much time I have. And
Uh,
it like made all this NDE stuff more in focus, because do I want to spend my time cleaning my house, or want to be putting these podcasts out here talking about NDEs? Because which is going to care? Which is going to people are going to care about? When I'm gone, they don't care if my house was clean in July last year. About
yeah.
podcasts I put out. They can listen to and benefit from, and yeah, it just like changes your ways of thinking of against the normal that you had before into what's important. And also too, I think we can see people differently. The ones that aren't shining, that are the
Right.
quiet heroes, the ones that's always out here doing for everybody, and they're just kind of like behind the scenes, and you have these other people that's loud and like look at me and all this other stuff, but what are they really doing for other people? Are they always just
Right.
serving themselves? And you just see things,
Yeah.
and what matters. And I think once, like I say, we've been on that soul, we've been on the other side, and there's intelligence. I call it the land of knowing. Once you've been in that land of
Hmm.
knowing, like some of it still comes back with you, and you have this added knowledge and insight, instincts that you carry around with you, but you can continue to dismiss them.
Yeah.
But when you start to recall and believe what you're recalling and acknowledge it, and yeah, I don't know, it can get deep.
I love it. But thank you for having me on.
And then we don't want to spend our time talking about death, right? We want to live life too. So I appreciate you coming on.
I appreciate you and thank you for all you do. You're great.
Thank you. And bye bye.